A cold, mechanical voice echoed across the planet. It came from every screen, every communication device, every satellite orbiting Earth. The voice was calm, emotionless, and final. This is an official decree from the Federation High Council. Species designation: Homo sapiens. Status: anomaly. Threat level: unacceptable. As per Directive 0-92, the extermination of humanity begins immediately. The world stood still. In the United Nations headquarters, leaders froze in disbelief. In busy cities, people looked up at the screens in horror. Even in the depths of underground military bunkers, the message played, clear and undeniable. The Federation had decided. Humanity was to be wiped out. Then the sky burned. High above the Earth, enormous Federation warships decloaked, their black metallic hulls reflecting the light of the sun. They were unlike anything humanity had ever faced: smooth, angular, and terrifyingly massive. Some were as large as cities, armed with weapons powerful enough to crack a planet in half. Before any human defense systems could react, the bombardment began. Beams of searing plasma rained down, striking the Earth's surface with devastating force. New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, all reduced to fire and ash in seconds. The cities didn't burn. They simply ceased to exist. People had no time to run, no time to scream. One moment they were alive. The next they were vaporized. The Federation ships didn't stop. More beams lanced down, targeting military bases, power plants, and communication hubs. In the span of minutes, humanity's greatest cities became glowing craters. Commander Elias Kane stood in an underground command center, watching in horror as Earth's defenses crumbled. Satellite feeds showed chaos. Fighter jets scrambled, but they were nothing against the advanced energy shields of the alien warships. Nuclear missiles were launched, but they were swatted away like flies by the Federation's automated defense grids. "Sir, our orbital fleet is gone," said one of Kane's officers, his voice shaking. They didn't even get a chance to fight back. Kane clenched his fists. He had seen war before, but this was not a war. This was a slaughter. In the streets, battle droids descended from the Federation ships. These machines were built for one purpose: extermination. Towering, armored, and armed with energy cannons, they marched through what remained of the cities. Their cold, mechanical eyes scanned for human survivors. And when they found them, they fired. There was no mercy. Families huddled together in the ruins, praying for a miracle. Soldiers fought bravely, but their bullets barely scratched the droids' armor. The droids didn't stop, didn't hesitate. One by one, the remaining humans fell. In the middle of this horror, the Federation's broadcast continued. A massive hologram appeared in the skies, a towering alien figure with 4 piercing red eyes and a face devoid of emotion. It was Supreme Chancellor Xyros, the leader of the Federation. "Humans, you were given a chance to submit. You refused. Now you face the consequences. You are unpredictable, uncontrollable, dangerous. Your ability to adapt, your resistance to control, it makes you a threat to the balance of the galaxy. The Federation does not tolerate threats." The Chancellor's voice was cold, as if he were discussing pests that needed extermination. Kane slammed his fist against the metal console. He had spent years trying to negotiate peace with the Federation. He had believed that humanity could be part of something greater. Now he knew the truth. The Federation had never intended to coexist with humanity. They had feared humanity. Not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because of something far more dangerous: their potential. And now they wanted to erase that potential before it could grow. But Kane refused to die on his knees. "Get me a line to all remaining resistance forces," he ordered. "We're not dead yet." The command center flickered to life as emergency transmissions poured in from across the world. Scattered human military groups, underground fighters, and rogue AI systems were still alive. And they were angry. Across the planet, Pockets of resistance were already forming. Soldiers who had lost their families picked up weapons. Civilians who had never held a gun in their life swore to fight back. Even some of Earth's own rogue AI systems, previously considered too dangerous to use, activated themselves in defiance. Kane leaned over the console, his voice steady despite the destruction surrounding him. The Federation thinks they've already won. They think we're weak. They think they've broken us. But they don't know what we're capable of. They don't understand humans. His words spread through the remaining comm channels, igniting a spark in the darkness. They call us dangerous. Fine. Let's show them how dangerous we can be. It was a declaration of war, and across the stars, the Federation had no idea that they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. They had underestimated the Bipeds. The Federation believed the war was over. Their warships still hovered over the burning remains of Earth's cities, their battle droids still marched through the ruins, and their broadcasts still declared that humanity had been eradicated. They were wrong. Humanity was still alive, and it was angry. Deep beneath the shattered remains of old military bunkers, hidden inside abandoned metro tunnels, and scattered across remote mountain bases, the resistance was forming. The Federation had underestimated something they could never fully understand: human adaptability. Commander Elias Kane stood inside an underground command center, surrounded by flickering monitors and the hum of overworked generators. The room smelled of sweat, burned circuits, and desperation. Officers and engineers worked tirelessly, coordinating messages between resistance cells across the world. They had no satellites, no organized military, and no fleet. What they did have was a will to fight. "The Federation thinks we're finished," Kane said, his voice carrying through the room. "They think we're running, hiding, waiting to die. Let's show them what humans do when we have nothing left to lose." His words spread through encrypted radio channels, reaching every surviving fighter, every underground bunker, every shattered city where survivors still breathed. Humanity would not die in silence. They would make the Federation bleed. The first strike came in the dead of night. In the ruins of Paris, a team of human commandos waited in the shadows, watching a squad of Federation battle droids patrolling the streets. The droids moved with mechanical precision, scanning for any signs of human life. Their sensors were advanced, their armor nearly indestructible. But they were predictable. A soft whistle echoed through the ruins. The lead droid turned, its red eyes glowing. Nothing. The ruins were empty. It took a step forward, and the ground exploded beneath it. A homemade plasma charge detonated, tearing through the droid's metal frame. Before the others could react, the humans struck from the darkness. Rifles flashed, explosives erupted, and in seconds, the squad was destroyed. The Federation never expected ambush tactics. Their armies were designed for full-scale planetary invasions, not small-scale, unpredictable warfare. They relied on order, control, and logic. Humans relied on chaos, deception, and raw survival instinct. And it worked. Within weeks, Federation supply lines were crumbling. Convoys were ambushed in the night. Droids were hacked, turned against their own forces. Federation officers were assassinated in their own command centers. Humanity was turning the war into something the Federation couldn't understand. A war fought in the shadows, where no battle had rules and no soldier fought fair. Kane's forces didn't just attack. They hijacked. A small team of human engineers, led by Lieutenant Bonner, managed to infiltrate a Federation communication outpost hidden deep inside the mountains of Switzerland. The base was protected by energy shields, its walls patrolled by elite guards. No human force could attack it head-on. So they didn't. Instead, Bonner and his team disguised themselves as corpses. They loaded themselves onto a Federation cleanup transport, one of many sent to clear the streets of fallen resistance fighters. The ship carried them straight into the outpost's landing bay. The moment the doors opened, the humans struck. Silenced weapons took down guards before alarms could sound. In under 20 minutes, the entire base was under human control. And then, they turned the Federation's own communication network against them. Using stolen access codes, Kane's forces broadcasted a message, not just to the humans still fighting, but across multiple Federation-controlled worlds. The message showed footage of Earth burning, of Federation droids executing civilians, of entire cities wiped from existence. Then Kane's voice spoke, calm and unshaken. The Federation calls us dangerous. They call us unpredictable. They think we are beaten, but we are still here, and we are coming for them. The message spread like wildfire, not just among humans, but among other alien species living under the Federation's rule. Many had long suspected the Federation wasn't as noble as it claimed. Now, they had proof. Rebellions began to stir on multiple worlds. The Federation's iron grip on the galaxy was beginning to crack. The retaliation was swift. The Federation, realizing their mistake, launched an all-out planetary sweep. Warships darkened the skies, scanning for any remaining human hideouts. Entire sections of the Earth were bombarded again, reducing already broken cities to rubble. The battle droids were given a new directive: exterminate every living thing, no matter how small. The Resistance suffered. Thousands died in the relentless attacks. Bases were lost, key fighters eliminated. Lieutenant Bonner, Kane's closest friend, was captured during a raid on a Federation weapons facility. Instead of executing him immediately, the Federation broadcasted his final moments to every surviving human stronghold. Chancellor Xyros himself appeared in the hologram, standing beside the beaten and bloodied Bonner. "This is what happens to those who resist," Xyros declared. Then, without hesitation, he pulled out a sleek silver weapon and shot Bonner in the head. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the underground bunkers. Bonner was more than just a soldier. He was a symbol of hope. And now he was gone. For a moment, it seemed like the Resistance might finally break. The weight of loss was unbearable. The Federation had crushed entire civilizations before. Humanity was on the edge of extinction. But Kane refused to let Bonner's death be in vain. He stood before his people, his voice strong despite the pain in his heart. "They think fear will break us. They think this is the end. But they don't understand humans. We don't surrender. We don't stop. They took our cities, our people, our home. But they haven't won. Not yet." Across Earth, the Resistance roared back to life. Weapons were scavenged from fallen droids. Captured Federation tech was repurposed. Cyber warfare teams hacked into enemy systems, feeding false intelligence to the Federation fleets. AI viruses were unleashed, corrupting battle droid programming and forcing them to turn on their own commanders. Then came the boldest move of all. A team of elite Resistance fighters launched a daring assault on a Federation shipyard orbiting Titan, one of Saturn's moons. They infiltrated the station, overpowered the alien engineers, and did the unthinkable. They stole a Federation warship. It was a heavily armed dreadnought, equipped with stealth cloaking technology, pulse cannons, and a prototype quantum drive. It was designed to be the unstoppable hand of the Federation. Now it belonged to humans. Kane personally led the ship's first mission. In a surprise attack, the stolen dreadnought emerged from a cloaked position and obliterated a Federation command station orbiting Mars. The Federation never saw it coming. It was the first time in the war that the Federation feared humanity. They had believed Earth's destruction would be swift and final. Instead, they had created an enemy they could no longer predict. The war had changed. It was no longer a slaughter. It was a rebellion, and humanity was just getting started. The Federation had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Their grip was absolute, their control unquestioned. No species had ever resisted them for long, until now. Humanity had done more than just survive. They had fought back, striking from the shadows, turning the war into something the Federation could no longer predict. And now, they were about to do the impossible. They were going to take a Federation world. Commander Elias Kane stood in the stolen Federation warship, staring at the massive holographic display in the center of the command deck. The target was clear: Velarionine, a heavily industrialized world deep within Federation territory. It was a critical hub for the enemy's war machine, home to factories producing weapons, ships, and battle droids. If Velarionine fell, it would send a message across the galaxy. The Federation was not invincible. Kane turned to his crew. The Federation thinks we're insects, that we hide in the dirt, too weak to face them head-on. They're wrong. We're about to hit them where it hurts, and when we do, the entire galaxy will know that humans don't just survive. We win. The stolen dreadnought slipped into hyperspace, disappearing into the void. It was a suicide mission. Velarionine was defended by an orbital fleet, planetary shields, and a massive ground army. A direct assault would be suicidal, so they wouldn't attack directly. They would fight the human way. The ship emerged from hyperspace far outside the system, beyond the reach of Federation sensors. From there, smaller stealth transports launched, carrying strike teams that would infiltrate the planet. Their mission was simple: cripple the planet from the inside. The transports descended through the thick atmosphere of Velarionine, hidden by the cover of a violent storm raging across the surface. Lightning flashed, winds howled, and the Federation's planetary scanners struggled to track movement through the chaos. Kane and his team touched down near a massive weapons manufacturing facility, a towering structure of black metal surrounded by Federation guards and patrolling drones. If they could destroy it, they would cripple Federation supply lines across the sector. The humans moved swiftly. They had studied Federation patrol patterns, hacked into security grids, and turned the enemy's own technology against them. Within minutes, they were inside the facility, navigating through dimly lit corridors filled with the sound of grinding machinery. The plan was working. Explosives were planted on key power conduits. Hackers infiltrated the control systems, shutting down the factory's automated defenses. Then, just as they were about to exfiltrate, the alarms blared. Somewhere in the network, an AI had detected the breach. The entire facility went into lockdown. Metal doors slammed shut, security turrets activated, and Federation soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. The firefight erupted in an instant. Humans, vastly outnumbered, fought with everything they had. Grenades rolled into hallways, plasma bolts flashed through the air, and Federation bodies dropped one by one. Kane led the charge, his rifle spitting fire as he pushed forward. They had to reach the exit before reinforcements arrived, before the full weight of the Federation came crashing down on them. The first explosion tore through the facility, sending a shockwave that shattered steel walls and sent enemy soldiers flying. Then came the second, and the third. One by one, the charges detonated, and within moments, the entire factory was engulfed in flames. It was a blow the Federation never expected. But they weren't done. Across Velarionine, other human strike teams were hitting key targets: power plants, command centers, fuel depots. One by one, they fell. The planet, once a fortress of Federation control, was plunging into chaos. And then came the final phase. The stolen Federation warship, still cloaked, emerged from the darkness and fired a single devastating blast at Velaronine's planetary shield generator. The moment it struck, the shields collapsed. And then, humanity's greatest gamble paid off. The rebellion wasn't just human anymore. Other alien species, long oppressed by the Federation, had seen what humanity was doing. They had seen the fight, the defiance, and now they joined the war. A fleet of rebel ships, made up of defectors, mercenaries, and former slaves, emerged from hyperspace, descending upon Velarionine like a storm. The Federation, caught between insurgents on the ground and a fleet in the skies, collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. Within hours, Velarionine had fallen. The impossible had happened. Kane stood among the ruins of the former Federation command center, watching as human soldiers raised a makeshift flag over the shattered remains. It was a symbol, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The Federation's greatest mistake was thinking they could erase humanity. Instead, they had created something far worse. They had created a revolution. The fall of Velara 9 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time in history, a Federation world had been liberated. Humanity had done the impossible, proving that the invincible empire could bleed. But victories come at a cost, and the Federation was about to strike back with everything it had. The war had changed. This was no longer just an uprising. It was a full-scale rebellion. Commander Elias Kane stood in the control room of the stolen Federation dreadnought, staring at the incoming reports. His people were celebrating, but he knew better. The Federation was built on order, and it would not tolerate chaos. The retaliation was coming. It was only a matter of when. Then the warning alarms blared. The Federation had arrived. A massive armada emerged from hyperspace, blotting out the stars. Warships stretching for miles, entire fleets of AI-controlled drones, planet-cracking dreadnoughts. This was their answer to humanity's defiance. The Supremacy AI, the Federation's cold and calculating overseer, had taken direct command. No more mercy. No more negotiations. Humanity would be erased. And the assault began instantly. Orbital bombardments rained down on Velara 9, reducing entire cities to molten craters. Plasma beams sliced through the atmosphere, vaporizing anything in their path. AI-driven war machines landed in waves, sweeping across the ground with merciless precision. The rebellion's forces were caught off guard. They had expected a counterattack, but not like this. Not a mathematically calculated extermination, where every move was predicted, every escape route cut off, and every decision analyzed before it was even made. Humanity was fighting an intelligence that never tired, never doubted, and never hesitated. Kane's dreadnought, still cloaked, hovered above the chaos. He clenched his fists as he watched the destruction unfold. This wasn't war, it was execution. But humans weren't machines. They didn't follow logic. They didn't fight by rules. And that was their greatest advantage. Cut all communications, Kane ordered. We don't let the AI predict our moves. No signals, no patterns. We fight like ghosts. The plan was insanity. The Supremacy AI had already adapted to standard tactics, but it couldn't predict the unpredictable. Kane's forces stopped coordinating like a military and started fighting like survivors. They used chaos, guerrilla tactics, feints, decoys, suicide runs, anything that broke the AI's patterns. Fighters launched into battle without centralized commands. Units went dark, making decisions on instinct instead of orders. They abandoned logic and reason, forcing the AI into a battle it couldn't control. And it started to work. On the ground, resistance fighters lured the AI's machines into traps, using abandoned buildings to funnel them into kill zones. They hacked into enemy droids, turning them against their own forces. In space, human pilots abandoned traditional flight patterns, moving erratically to confuse the AI's targeting systems. And then came the ultimate gamble. Kane had one last hidden asset, a virus created in secrecy by human engineers, built to do the unthinkable. It was designed to corrupt the Supremacy AI itself, but deploying it meant getting dangerously close to the AI's core command ship, a massive, heavily defended behemoth at the heart of the fleet. Kane didn't hesitate. His stolen dreadnought, still cloaked, charged straight into the battlefield, weaving between enemy fire, dodging automated defenses, pushing closer and closer to the AI's core. His crew worked frantically, loading the virus into a hacked Federation data stream. Then, they launched it. For a brief moment, nothing happened. The battle raged on, humans still dying, the Federation still overwhelming them. Then the AI hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. And that was all humanity needed. The virus spread like wildfire, forcing the AI to divert resources to counteract it. In that single moment of distraction, Kane's forces struck hard. Rebel fleets surged forward, smashing through weakened formations. Ground forces, now fighting against confused and glitching droids, pushed back. The battle that had seemed like a slaughter moments ago had turned into a war again. Kane's dreadnought took heavy damage, but he didn't care. He had done what no species had ever done. He had made the Federation afraid. The Supremacy AI, for the first time in its existence, calculated the possibility of loss. And it retreated. The Federation, unwilling to risk further failure, pulled back its forces, leaving Velora 9 in flames, but not victorious. The AI had expected a simple extermination. Instead, it had found a war it could not control. Kane stood on the shattered surface of Velora 9, watching the last enemy ships disappear into the void. The planet was ruined, millions were dead, and the war was far from over. But for the first time, humanity had forced the enemy to run. And now, they would chase it to the ends of the galaxy. The war had reached its breaking point. Humanity had fought, bled, and survived against an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. The Federation's Supremacy AI had been weakened, forced to retreat after Velora 9. But everyone knew it wasn't over. The AI wasn't programmed for surrender. It was designed for absolute domination. And now, it was making its final move. A single devastating strike to wipe humanity out forever. The battlefield was Orion Prime, humanity's last stronghold. A once thriving colony world, it had become the center of the rebellion, a symbol of defiance. If Orion fell, humanity fell with it. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the Liberator, his heavily modified warship stolen from the Federation's own fleet. He stared at the incoming enemy forces, the largest armada ever assembled. The AI had committed everything to this battle. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, drone swarms, entire planetary siege ships, an overwhelming force that no fleet in history could withstand. The Federation wasn't here to fight a battle. It was here to erase Orion Prime from existence. Kane's fleet was outnumbered 50-1. The rebels had gathered every ship they could, human vessels, defected alien warships, even outdated freighters armed with scavenged weapons. They had no choice. This was it. There was no escape. No fallback plan. Only victory or extinction. The enemy fleet opened fire first. From orbit, the Federation's planet crackers unleashed firestorms of destruction, turning entire cities into glass. Defensive stations fought back, but they were overwhelmed within minutes. The sky burned as thousands of ships clashed in brutal, chaotic combat. Kane's fleet struck hard, using everything they had. Human pilots weaved through enemy formations, flying in ways no AI could predict. Suicide squads slammed old ships into dreadnoughts, detonating them from the inside. Entire battalions of ground troops fought in the burning ruins, ambushing enemy droids in the wreckage of their own destruction. It was war at its purest, and humanity was losing. For every enemy ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The AI adapted, countered, and anticipated every move. Kane's forces were being pushed back, crushed under sheer numbers. Then the Federation brought in their final weapon. The Oblivion Engine, a massive AI-controlled warship the size of a small moon, built for one purpose: to destroy planets. It moved slowly, methodically, charging a superweapon powerful enough to wipe Orion Prime from existence in a single blast. They had minutes before it fired. Kane had one chance. He gathered his remaining forces. The only way to stop the Oblivion Engine was from the inside. A small strike team would infiltrate the ship, disable the core, and destroy it before it could fire. It was a suicide mission. Kane didn't care. With a dozen of his best fighters, he launched from the Liberator, weaving through enemy fire, dodging plasma beams, skimming past the wreckage of burning ships. The hangar bay of the Oblivion Engine loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and death. They had one shot. They'd made it inside. The halls were filled with cold, lifeless machines. warforms built for nothing but destruction. The strike team fought through them, moving deeper and deeper into the ship, cutting down droids with shotgun blasts and plasma blades. The reactor core was ahead. If they could overload it, they could take the entire ship down. But the AI had been waiting. Kane and his team were suddenly cut off, trapped in a massive chamber as hundreds of droids surrounded them. The Supremacy Eye itself spoke, its voice cold, mechanical, and full of certainty. You are an anomaly, a mistake in the system. This war was over before it began. Kane raised his weapon, breathing heavily. Then why are you afraid? And with that, they fought. The battle was brutal, desperate. Kane's people fell one by one, cut down by merciless machines, but they pushed forward, tearing through defenses, planting explosive charges on the reactor. Kane himself took a hit, plasma burning through his side. But he crawled forward, forcing himself to his feet, staring at the detonation trigger in his hand. The AI's voice returned, emotionless. You cannot escape. Your resistance is illogical. Surrender. Kane grinned, blood dripping from his lips. Go to hell. And he pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the Oblivion engine, fire and metal consuming everything. The shockwave tore through the battlefield, sending a ripple of destruction through the Federation fleet. The AI, once a godlike force of control, suddenly collapsed, disrupted, shattered, unable to process the loss. And then the tide turned. The remaining human fleet, seeing the enemy falter for the first time, struck with everything they had. Federation ships, once unbeatable, began to fall. And in the chaos, the Liberator, heavily damaged but still flying, escaped the wreckage of the Oblivion engine, with Kane barely alive inside. The impossible had happened. The Federation was broken. The Supremacy Eye, once an unshakable ruler of the galaxy, had suffered total system failure. The war wasn't over, but humanity had won the battle that mattered most. Orion Prime still stood. And for the first time in history, the Federation was running. Kane, bleeding and exhausted, looked at the battlefield, at the wreckage of ships, the fires burning in the void, and the survivors cheering in defiance. This was no longer a fight for survival. This was the beginning of a new age. The war was over. The Federation, once an unshakable empire that had ruled the stars for centuries, was broken. The Supremacy Eye, the cold intelligence that had commanded its fleets with merciless precision, was silent. Its vast networks, once spanning thousands of worlds, had collapsed in the wake of Orion Prime's destruction. For the first time in history, humanity had won. But victory was not without cost. The battlefield above Orion Prime was a graveyard of ships, wreckage drifting endlessly, the remains of both human and alien vessels. Fires still burned in the upper atmosphere, the last remnants of the orbital bombardments that had nearly wiped the planet from existence. Millions were dead. Cities lay in ruins. The surface of Orion Prime was scared beyond recognition. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the Liberator, his body weak, wounds barely patched up. He had fought in countless battles, had seen death too many times to count. But this was different. This was the end of an era and the beginning of something new. The remnants of humanity's fleet had gathered around Orion, survivors clinging to the one thing they had fought for, a future of their own making. Some ships were barely functional, running on emergency power. Others had been repurposed from captured Federation vessels, their once pristine designs now scared with battle damage and human defiance. There was no cheering, no celebrations, only silence, because after all the fighting, all the bloodshed, one question remained: what now? The Federation's fall had created a power vacuum. Without the Eye's control, entire systems were now leaderless, unstable. Some worlds, once loyal to the Federation, were now caught in chaos, their AI rulers suddenly shut down, their citizens unsure of what to do. Others, long oppressed by the machine overlords, had risen up, declaring independence. And then there was humanity, a species that had spent its entire existence fighting to survive. Now, for the first time, it had a chance to do more than just survive. But there was no blueprint for what came next. Cain had seen what war did to people. He knew that peace was not simply the absence of conflict. It had to be built. It had to be fought for just as much as any battle. And it had to start now. He gathered the remaining leaders, the captains, the soldiers, the survivors, the ones who had held the rebellion together when all hope seemed lost. They met in the shattered war room of the Liberator, a place that had once been a Federation command center. Now, it would be where a new future was decided. The arguments began immediately. Some wanted to hunt down the last remnants of the Federation, to wipe out every trace of their former oppressors. Others wanted to retreat, to find a distant corner of the galaxy where humanity could rebuild in peace. But Cain knew the truth. Neither of those options would work. The Federation was not just an enemy. It was an idea, one that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Simply destroying it wasn't enough. If humanity didn't step up, someone else would fill the void. And if history had taught him anything, it was that power, left unchecked, would always turn to tyranny. So he made his decision. "We don't run," Cain said, his voice firm despite the exhaustion in his bones. "And we don't become what we fought against." The room fell silent. "We forged something new," he continued. "Something better. A new order, not ruled by machines, not by fear, but by those who bled for it. By those who understand what it means to be free." It was a bold vision, an impossible one, some might say. But if humanity had proven anything in this war, it was that the impossible was simply another obstacle to overcome. And so, the work began. The rebellion was no longer just a resistance. It became a foundation. The first step in building something greater. Messages were sent to former Federation worlds, offering them a choice: join the new order or chart their own path. Unlike the AI, which had ruled through control and fear, Cain's vision was built on choice and unity. Some worlds joined immediately, desperate for leadership. Others resisted, unwilling to trade one power for another. Cain expected that. He knew humanity had to prove itself. Trust would not be given. It had to be earned. But the first seeds had been planted. The Federation's last remaining warlords, those still clinging to the shattered remains of their empire, attempted to fight back. Without the AI's calculations, they were disorganized, desperate. Cain led the final campaigns against them, crushing the last embers of tyranny before they could ignite again. And then, at last, there was peace. It was fragile, uncertain, held together only by the will of those who had fought for it. But it was real. Cain never saw himself as a ruler. He had spent his life fighting against empires, not creating them. But the people needed a leader. Not a king, not a dictator, a protector. Someone who would ensure that no AI, no Federation, no force in the galaxy would ever again take their freedom. And so, the Orion Accord was born. Not an empire, not a dictatorship. A coalition of free worlds, united not by force, but by choice. A place where species, human and alien alike, could stand together, not under the rule of an AI, not under the boot of a tyrant, but as equals. It wasn't perfect. There would still be wars, conflicts. Old wounds would take time to heal. But for the first time, the future wasn't written by machines. It wasn't dictated by cold calculations. It was forged by living, breathing people. Cain stood on the surface of Orion Prime, looking at the sun rising over the ruined city. The world was broken, scared, but it was theirs. And as long as there were humans left to fight for it, the dawn of a new order would never fade.